I hope you managed to join us on Masterclass Live. Please find another sample from our Masterclass content library for you to enjoy. Now you can't escape it. The thinking that got you here won't get you there. As you progress your program, at some point you will need to make a decision as to whether you want to cross from a compliance-based approach to one of risk. A compliance-based approach or a compliance-based mindset checks vendors against a set of requirements. The output is demonstrating compliance. Many organisations stop here as, realistically, it makes stakeholders comfortable that something is being done, and it can be evidenced and shown. The thinking is that we can demonstrate that a job has been done. One sign that a company has a compliance-based mindset is the very desire to cling closely to frameworks. This behaviour is to prevent the individual from being open to criticism, as they can point back to the framework and it's the framework's fault. A risk-based approach does not attempt to use static checklists, but instead evaluates the impact to the organisation and the likelihood of occurrence, or, put more simply, it's evaluating risk. The mindset is not to test against requirements, but to use those requirements to create a bespoke programme that adapts as risks are understood. There's nothing inherently wrong with a compliance-based approach, but it doesn't offer the same level of protection. If the tone from the top doesn't support a risk-based approach, then any change to this will be unsuccessful. The approach must match with the culture of the company or the intended culture. Plenty of organisations going through transformation in their programmes are looking for a framework or a shortcut to rocket to maturity. While there are plenty of accelerators, when moving beyond the compliance approach, there really are no shortcuts or patterns. Everything requires thought and a bespoke approach that is appropriate to the context of the organisation. The change in mindset should really not be underestimated. You need to acknowledge it, you need to think about it yourself and make sure everyone else who is part of the programme or is going to be responsible for the programme also recognises that change. Something that takes a TPRM program to the next level is how you manage differentiation. Differentiation is recognising that each vendor presents a unique set of risks, and to be most efficient, you should be only using the minimum effort to evaluate those risks. Clearly, if we treated every vendor uniquely, there would be no ability to automate or scale anything. In a simple model, you only really need to decide whether or not to carry out an evaluation at all. But as you scale, you want to decide who gets the full focus and the hands-on validation and verification, who doesn't get anything, and then a degree of people in between. I would love to provide a one-size-fits-all solution, but the reality is that the right solution depends on your business. You need to know the requirements and the risk. What I can provide you with is a way to think through this problem. So first off, you need to decide a method or a criteria around which to differentiate. The easiest way to think about your list of vendors is to decide how many present no material risk to the nature of the company or the work they perform. We'll call these the low risk, and as guidance, approximately 40 to 60% of vendors will likely fit in this list. With the majority of the remainder, you need a simple, repeatable review process that you can verify. We'll call this the medium list, and this could be between 30 and 50%. Finally, the remainder are the high list. Here, you need to recognise that you will conduct a more detailed investigation, perhaps one level deeper than those in the medium list. This will be your 10%. You can make this a lot more complicated as needed, but bear in mind this is about prioritising a valuable resource. To the high impact, high likelihood risks, you want to put that effort, and a vendor may at any time move between these tiers as you discover or as perhaps the context changes. The activities will depend on the resources you have available, but for the low vendors you may choose not to do anything further than an internal assessment and review of available information. However, you do want to do some kind of cursory assessment occasionally to ensure that doesn't throw up any cause to look further. Medium vendors will be subject to a full assessment, with questions pre-filtered for relevance. The answers here will be reviewed and attention given to any supporting commentary to verify those answers. The high vendors should be subject to a full assessment, coupled with a specific investigation into the higher risk areas through interviews or direct on-site auditing. First level supporting information should be always probed further here to ensure there is actual operating evidence of the control and not just policies in place. Change in the internal or external context may remove or introduce threats and weaknesses. It's for this reason that we should have vendors in a life cycle. It starts off with the onboarding. Clearly, we need to perform the relevant assessments for the identified risks and be satisfied that at that point in time, the risks are acceptable. The assessment and any follow-up might create a list of actions or risk acceptances, which should in turn have their own life cycle. Action should be addressed and confirmed, while risk acceptance should be reviewed within the business and accepted for a period of time and then perhaps reassessed and reaccepted as needed, eventually being closed through being resolved or no longer being relevant. The vendor should then be reassessed periodically, with the frequency dependent on the risk and their tiering. Annually or every 2 years is pretty typical. The vendor should also be reassessed following any material change in the internal or external context. The nature of the service might have changed. The company may now be strategically dependent. There may have been a market, societal, regulatory change. The vendor may have been part of merger or acquisition, which changes their internal policies. They might have changed processes, they might have changed people or technology. All of these are triggers for reassessment. Finally, a vendor will complete a finite contracted piece of work, or the company may elect not to renew. Ensuring that the vendor has had all of their access removed and data destruction certificates where required have been provided closes the loop on the life cycle and removes all the potential threat. Maintaining a list of previous vendors may also prove useful in future if there is breaking news about a breach. Moving from a compliance mindset to one of risk requires disruption to some of the hard work that has got you here, but it's for really good reason.